We know from all the data out there, upwards of 68% of board certified plastic surgeons and aesthetic providers are seeing their content shadow banned, right? So you're basically posting into a void where you're getting like 3 likes or like 12 views on your story, and you're like, what gives? It is so good to be here with all of you. We have got a great topic in store for all of you today. And today is really a unique kind of concept because this is really tailored for a very specific kind of practice. Everything we're going to share together today is really tailored for a very specific type of aesthetic provider. If you are that provider who is at $1 million or more of revenue, you are in the right place. What we're going to be talking about today is something that I want to call shatter the ceiling, right? You've probably, if you're anything like most of the seven-figure practices that we talk to, you've probably gotten there by two things. One is being really good at what you do. The other is, you are kind of in that position where, word of mouth has really taken off for you. And over the years, you've really built something very successful. That is a phenomenal place to be. But we have a saying in marketing, what got you here isn't going to get you there. What got you here isn't going to get you there. So if you're trying to get to that next 7 figures of revenue, you might not be able to do that with what you've used to get to that first million or that second million. So we're going to dive right into all of that today. We're going to get into some very tactical content today. So grab your pen, grab your paper, maybe you want to grab your favorite beverage as well. We've got a lot to cover, and as always, not a ton of time to cover it. I know how busy you all are. I want to respect your time. We're going to let you get back to your day. So let's dive right in, shall we? What are we going to talk about today? Well, whenever I talk about what is happening in the world of seven-figure practices, I think it's really important to understand first and foremost, like where we are as an industry. And it kills me to say this, but like if you were to ask me what the state of aesthetic marketing, like right now, it's not great. It's kind of chaotic because we have two things happening in tandem that are really keeping a lot of providers stuck, a lot of providers frustrated, a lot of things you're doing not working. So I really want you to understand where we're at so you can kind of get a better picture of like why what you're doing right now maybe isn't working the way you'd want it to, or maybe it's something that worked really well for you in the past, but like now you're seeing diminishing returns from it. Why is that? It's not just you. There's nothing wrong with you. It's not that marketing doesn't work. It's that the game has changed. So let's talk about like where we really find ourselves as an industry now, because there's kind of two things happening in tandem. The first thing that's happening right now is what I call the competence famine. This is like a perfect storm of mess of many things that are happening at once where the right voices, aka all of you, are like kind of being silenced, and we are seeing all kinds of just slop out there. So what is the competence famine? There's a few things happening. Number one, Meta does not like our industry. Instagram does not like our industry. We know from all the data out there, upwards of 68% of board certified plastic surgeons and aesthetic providers are seeing their content shadow banned, right? So you're basically posting into a void where you're getting like 3 likes or like 12 views on your story, and you're like, what gives? So that's one part of it. Another part of it is, quite frankly, we're in a world of AI slop, even compared to 90 days ago. Many of you may have seen my content from earlier in the year where like I was saying about all the things that I expect to happen this year. One thing that's happened for the worse is, we're in an AI slop world, right? It used to be even as like recently as 12 or 18 months ago, even 6 months ago, compared to today with the mass adoption of Claude, 6, 12, 18 months ago, I would tell, hustle. Let's get out there. More is more, right? More content is great. More SEO rich blogs on your website are great. More social media posting is great. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do any of those things anymore. But what I am saying is like, we've kind of seen this whole idea of like just posting content kind of turn into this unwinnable game, right? Why is that? Think about it. You've got probably, as you're listening to me, 3 or 4 AI apps open right now. Maybe you use ChatGPT. Maybe you use Claude. Maybe you use Perplexity, right? But you're using all of these AI tools to be like infinitely more productive. Well, guess what? So is everybody else, right? Everybody else has those exact same AI tools, and they can now do in a single afternoon what used to take a digital marketing company weeks, right? So yes, AI is great in the sense it gives you a productivity, advantage. You can do things much quicker than you could before, but guess what? So is everybody else. So all of a sudden, hustling harder and being more productive in your marketing and getting more content out there, like that is no longer useful, right? So we've got Meta that hates us, right? We've got this whole idea of like basically productivity being useless now, right? And we've got this whole third factor of like people with completely unqualified credentials or any credentials are not being shadow banned and getting out there and being really, vocal, right? There are people that are teaching people how to inject their own neuromodulator. There are people teaching people how to do their own microneedling. It is terrifying. So when you take this whole idea of like, all of a sudden, AI has flooded out slop and everyone's sounding the same. You take this whole fact that Meta hates our industry and upwards of 68% of you are shadow banned, and the whole idea that we've got completely uncredible voices like blasting content out there on social media. TikTok is the worst for that. I'm just being transparent. Because, and oh, without even, we're not going to talk about factor number 4, which is like so many of you are camera shy, but right, those 3 factors bring us into what I call the confidence famine, right? There just isn't confidence out there right now in the world of marketing. Patients are seeing that. They don't know who to believe, what to believe. So they're just like, I'm not going to listen to any of it. Get me off this blog, get me off social, get me off the internet. So that's the confidence famine. And then on the flip side of that, we've got what I really want to focus on today, the ceiling of clinical excellence, right? The ceiling of clinical excellence. What does this mean? So if you are at 7 figures right now, you are probably in a situation where you got there primarily by doing 2 things. One is being an expert at your craft. Amazing, right? The other is you have really strong word of mouth. That's awesome, but it only gets you so far. You're at that point where you realize you need to be doing more. You've hit, the kind of maximum capacity of just being good at what you do and word of mouth, and it's gotten you to 1 or 2 million, but like, where do we go from here? So we're going to talk about that a lot today too. So understand, like, most of you, you're probably exhausted. When I talk to my peers in the marketing space, many of us are feeling exhausted, right? Because all of a sudden we're in, like, again, this storm of just straight up mess where we don't know what to do next or how to make sure you sound credible or what it takes. I am here to clarify all of that for you. So let's keep moving right along on this topic. Now, you guys know me by now. I am not one to be negative. I'm usually quite positive and upbeat. But again, I just do also like to come from a place of being realistic and helping you understand where we're at right now, right? So again, you're at that ceiling of clinical excellence, and all of a sudden, you realize, like, oh, my email rates are going down in terms of deliverability, or oh, not as many people are booking on these promotions anymore. Oh, people don't like our SMS messages. So you're at that ceiling. Let's just add some data to this, right? I really just want to understand some things that we're seeing happen in the greater world of just, consumer sentiment and economics right now. So again, like I said, we know a bunch of you are feeling shadow banned, but then there's a bunch of you that aren't even, and you may not be a surgical practice, but if you are a surgical practice, you're seeing this. People that are not plastic surgeons calling themselves plastic surgeons, right? It's a mess out there, right? Also, here's something you might not realize. You might be seeing, maybe you're seeing with like your Google ads, you're getting a bunch of like weird random form submissions, or like your website is having a bunch of like random inquiries come through that like are very clearly not human, or you call the number and it just hangs up and it's like dead air, right? You are not alone. We now know that actually, believe it or not, let me start again. Over half of all web traffic we now see online is bots. It is, and many of those are bad bots, by the way, doing malware and all kinds of nefarious activity, right? So we now know that like over half of all traffic is bots, right? And then the other half of that are people that don't want to do this whole AI automation, text message appointment reminder, or don't want. I called a hotel the other day and it was a robot, and I was like, this is sketchy. Like, I need to get someone at the front desk for something, right? And I hung up, right? Like, so we now know that like over 75% of consumers, they will use AI in the right places and they're not averse to AI. But when it comes to actually speaking to someone, and when it comes to their face, like they'll use AI for things like simulation and really cool tools like that. But like they still want to engage with a human somewhere along that journey, right? So I'm not saying AI is bad, far from it. I love AI, I truly love AI, but you need to be very mindful about where you deploy it. So these are just some things that have really contributed to that confidence famine I was talking about a few minutes ago, right? But let's take this a little bit further, right? So where are we at as an industry, right? If we look at where we've been, I don't know how long all of you have been in aesthetic medicine. I have been in this game formally since around 2014. So I've been in this game 12 years. And in that time, I've seen us move really through 3 phases. The first phase was kind of actually on its way out when I was just entering the industry. And this is what I'm going to call the production era, right? This is where we saw, if you look in the early 2010s, sites like Groupon were in their heyday, right? We didn't have near as much competition as we have now. And it's what I'm going to call the production era, right? Through any means possible, get people into the practice, zap them, fill them, freeze them, get them out of there, and get the next person in, right? It was very much a volume-focused time in our industry, right? People weren't worried about the discount wars because that wasn't happening yet. They just needed people in door, through any which way they could get them, because at that time, medical aesthetics was not as mainstream as it is today, right? So that was kind of what you saw happening through, the early to mid 2010s, right? This production area, more is more, at any means necessary, just get people on the books, right? But then, as competition grew, all of a sudden we evolved into what we kind of just are now moving out of, which was the hustle era, right? Where you had to stand out, which you still do, by the way, where you had to stand out. More visibility was better. You wanted to hire like a really snappy internet marketing company that knew SEO and knew how to get you at the first page of Google and knew how to optimize your Google AdWords and your meta ads when those came out, right? And more was better. Well, guess what? Like I said, AI has completely made that whole era unwinnable, right? There is no such thing as being more visible than someone else because you all have the exact same AI tools at your disposal, right? You all have the same social media algorithms kind of working against you, right? So more is not better in this era that we're moving into, right? What's better in this era? We are in an era I am calling the ingenuity and interaction era. The ingenuity and interaction era. So all these channels you've been using, they still matter. Instagram still matters. Email still matters, right? Paid ads, Meta, Facebook, right? Instagram, Google, wherever you choose to do them, those still matter. But I'm not really one to swear, but you darn well better have something good to say and something different. Because if you don't in this era, you are going to be completely washed over and overlooked with a sea of AI content doing the exact same thing you are, right? We are in the era of ingenuity and interaction. You better have something good to say and something unique to say and say it in a way that's all your own if you want any hope of your marketing doing what it's supposed to and getting results, right? I could go on ChatGPT right now and have a whole blog for a month with a different skincare post every day, right? I could go into my Claude and have it build an entire website about mommy makeovers for me in about 30 minutes, maybe less, right? All of a sudden, you don't just need to have the marketing assets, you have to have them and make sure they stand out and say something different. That's always been true, but it is true right now like we have never seen it as marketers. And again, I'm very friendly with many of my peers in the SEO space and in the website space and in the Google and Meta paid advertising space. Those aren't things I do, but they're like, yeah, it's rough out there. Like we are really having to get creative and do things a little bit differently. And all of a sudden, strategy matters way more than it did before, right? All these people who over the past 2 or 3 years, you saw like harassing your inbox every day and popping up on your Instagram ads, like 30 patients in 30 days. AI, thank goodness, one of the good things it's done, has completely wiped that model out because all of a sudden that's just, slop and no one's noticing it and no one's clicking on it anymore, right? So keep that in mind. Now, just to give you a little bit of context to what's happening as far as social media goes, again, you have to be on social media. I would never tell you not to, but understand the role it's playing is changing. When we look at the affluent consumer population, many of them are moving offline, right? Your reach is going down. If we look at the data out there, like the popularity of people searching things like digital detox retreats and like digital detox resorts, like that is booming, right? Offline is quickly becoming much more of a status symbol. So if you're that practice where maybe you were very well timed and you got into the game when Instagram is still, emerging more than it is now, you might all of a sudden need to really look at your marketing plan and understand we need to do more things offline, right? You might be someone who you built your entire practice off of really good SEO, and all of a sudden, page one doesn't really exist anymore, right? I don't know about all of you, but if we look, what I do and we see most consumers doing, they're not scrolling down page one of Google right now. They're not even clicking on the first listing anymore. They're looking at what Google's AI answer engine is giving people. We're now in an era of zero-click marketing, right? So understand between what's happening with algorithms and what's happening with consumer sentiment, you got to be online. I'm not saying not to, but you need to understand the most dangerous number in marketing is truly the number one, right? One way you're getting patients, one type of offer you're making, one type of way you've gone about building your SEO or building your content ecosystem, right? One is truly a dangerous number. It's always been dangerous, but in the interaction and ingenuity era, my goodness, it is more dangerous than ever. So really want you all to understand that. So what is going to get you to that next level right now? What is going to make your marketing actually work right now? As much as I wish I had a team of like 50, high paid researchers in my company and we dealt with like the Fortune 50 blue chip companies, we don't, okay? So I don't have my own research on this. I refer to the people that are spending millions of dollars every quarter to do it. In this case, it's a consulting company by the name of Bain, right? And they've researched big, small, mid-sized companies, everyone in between. These are the firms that, companies pay literally tens of millions of dollars each year to go consult with them and do the research. Here's what they are seeing. There are 3 things that we know are moving the needle right now in business, both in and out of medical aesthetics, by the way, right? The 3 things that we know are really moving the needle right now. The first first is personalization. By the way, this is somewhere AI can work to your advantage, right? People want to feel like they are receiving something unique to them. They don't want to feel like they're being marketed to like every other person, right? Direct mail, when used with your existing patients, is making a comeback because it feels personalized, right? Personalization is really, really important. They want to feel like everything, not just in terms of marketing, but the experience they get when they come into your practice is bespoke and personalized, right? Another one is trust, right? If you are not going live on Instagram right now, if you are not using TikTok live right now, if you aren't going live on any other channels right now, you are missing a wealth of opportunity because frankly, live is one of the last beacons we have left in marketing. Why do you think I'm going live every week this year? Like, that's not just because I like talking to you as much as I do, right? The reason I am going live and doing all this content and all of this going live is right now one of the few ways you know you're actually dealing with a real person. It's one of the few ways you know that you have content that's coming from a person who actually knows what they're talking about, right? Everything else besides live may be AI generated, right? It's crazy, right? What you can do with video right now. So trust is another big one, and live content is one of the best ways to get you there. And then third, again, really looking at like the human touch and the human experience, right? Yes, use AI for automations and doing things where you're segmenting your audience and appointment reminders that are elegantly worded. We're going to talk about that later today, right? But really make sure that you are keeping the human touch there. That is what people want, and that is what they're going to pay for. So understand, when we look at what's going to give you that edge in today's landscape, it's not productivity. Productivity is now useless to an extent because everyone can be infinitely productive if they have the right AI tool, right? It's going to be that human touch, right? The human experience. It's going to be instilling trust, and it's of course going to be that whole thing we talked about a second ago, personalization. Personalization, trust, and the human experience. That is what's going to help your marketing thrive moving into 2026 and as we move into 2027. So here's the thing. Like I said, what's going to get you that shift? It's human experience, it's personalization, and it's trust, absolutely. But let's take that a step further and apply it to your practices, right? First of all, you want to be marketing to that patient that's not going to be that person just consumes AI slop, right? You want a premium patient that is truly you're going to endure and build to your next million. And on top of that, you need to make very well sure that you are not just selling what everyone else is selling. Oh, a session with this device. Oh, units of that neuromodulator. Oh, syringes of that dermal filler. Like, you truly need a proprietary mechanism and really your own unique way of describing how you deliver results for patients. It is truly going to be your strategic edge in this era. We're going to show you how to do it today. So let's keep moving right along. We're going to talk about loyalty leaks today, right? Yes, more patients are great and new patients are wonderful, but that's not what's going to get most of you to your next million. What's going to get most of you to that next 7 figures of revenue is going to be tweaking what you're already doing with your existing patient base such that they can buy more and more often from you. We're going to talk about like why a good patient experience actually isn't as good as you think and could very well be working against you. We're going to talk about how you rise above price wars and all of that mess. We're going to talk about where your clinical expertise really comes in as leverage. We're going to talk a little bit about paid ads and where they do and don't make sense. And I have a very contrarian view on paid ads for what it's worth. And then last but not least, we're going to talk to, it's some Adam Haroon training. You better believe we're going to talk about marketing to the affluent and high ticket patients, right? So we're going to get into all this today. So let's talk about where we go, right? The first thing I want you to understand is if you are trying to build your entire marketing plan the way you did in the productivity era, where you are just marketing treatments and modalities, there's a place for that, especially on your website. But that alone is not going to set you head and shoulders above, okay? Modalities are important, and you better have best-in-class technology. That's a whole other rant for another day. But whatever you've got in your practice right now, make sure you are not just selling those modalities, you are selling outcomes, okay? Patients are buying outcomes. Patients are looking for outcomes. Nobody is looking in the mirror and saying to themselves, I look like I need 40 units of neuromodulator. They're saying, I look tired. They're saying my skin is looking dull. They're saying I'm really self-conscious about my acne scars, okay? They are not looking in the mirror and thinking modalities. They are looking in the mirror and thinking problem and solution. And how you speak to that, how you speak to that emotional need is by selling an outcome, right? You can do this different ways, right? You can do it in a 90-day program. Maybe you have a proprietary method. We're going to talk about that a little bit later today, but make sure you are selling outcomes. And what's also great about this, all of a sudden you are back where you belong in that position of competence, right? Where you are now dictating the patient's care. They're not coming in and telling you, I need 3 sessions with this, or I need 1 syringe of that, or 4 units of this. Like, you are back in that competence position and that credibility position where you are dictating care, right? Which, by the way, going back to the competence famine, all these review sites have only contributed to that, but that's a whole other conversation for another day. But again, we need you in a position where you are dictating medical care. Really, really important, right? Also, like I said, you need to be selling to emotion, right? I always say the affluent buy with emotion and justify with facts later. So if you are just talking about features and benefits and stats and data, like there's a place for that and it's important, but understand that alone does not make marketing compelling. What makes marketing compelling is the emotional factor. So like look back at your last 4 or 5 social media posts and really ask yourself, were we just rattling off features and talking about this modality or like were we selling to emotion, right? You need to sell to emotion. I cannot emphasize that enough. So let's talk about the emotional triggers that actually drive someone to buy in the affluent market, right? There's really 5, okay? The first is aspiration. Who does somebody want to become, right? Maybe they're at a crossroads in their life where they just hit their 50s and they're looking at what that next chapter of their life looks like, right? Maybe they are back on the dating scene and want to look and feel their best as they do that, right? But aspiration is one emotional trigger you really want to tap into in your marketing. Another one that I'll be honest, I don't particularly like, but it does motivate people is fear, right? Maybe especially if you are a wellness practice, is something you do in a very tactful way start to look at, right? Nobody wants to end up 65 and feeling like sludge, right? Nobody wants to let something they're already self-conscious about get worse, right? If you are, really in that body transformation market, right? This might be something that you really try to not necessarily use in your marketing, but understand in your patient's psychology, right? They've gotten to a point, maybe it's a number on the scale, maybe it's a body fat percentage, maybe it's some other, health marker where they realize like, I need to turn this ship around. I want to do this in a proactive and really preventative way before I end up in the ER, right? So fear is not one I particularly like using in marketing, but it's one that is running through your patient's mind and one that you do want to be cognizant of. Status, right? How does somebody want to be perceived, right? This is massive in the aesthetic medicine industry. Now, thank goodness we are no longer in the industry era of this, but many years ago, in the 2010s, like rich face was a thing, and like people wanted to look done because it was a status symbol. Again, thank God we've moved beyond that, but status is something on the mind of every aesthetic consumer, right? And the biggest one, confidence, right? That is why at the end of the day, almost everyone is doing an aesthetic treatment. On one level or another, it is helping them look and feel their best, right? Confidence is the biggest one of all 5 of these, right? It's the biggest emotion that influences an aesthetic buyer's decision. And then last but not least is connection, right? Nobody wants to go to like some med spa where they feel like they're in a factory, or even just as bad, the really high-end practice with like the marble waterfall and everyone looks perfect and like they feel really intimidated. Like that's bad too, right? People want to find a practice where they feel like they belong. Who are you speaking to? Who is your best patient? Make sure you are speaking to what is going to allow them to feel connection. So aspiration, fear, really looking at the whole idea of status, confidence, and connection. These are the 5 emotions you really want to make sure that your marketing taps into, that you're going to be able to use to really deliver that human experience that we talked about matters right now. These are the 5: aspiration, fear, status, confidence, and connection, right? So, how do we actually bring that to life? How do we actually distinguish your practice, right? Understand your brand is not your logo. We need to build you a brand. Today is all about brand and positioning, but we don't just do that through a logo alone. Your brand is actually built on 3 layers. Let's talk about them really quickly, okay? So at the bottom is your strategy, right? What is your brand promise? What do you promise to every single patient, whether they're 18 or 80, whether they're coming in for one session with an energy device or they're coming in for full facial balancing, right? What do you promise to every single patient every single time? That's your brand's promise, right? Then you're going to have your brand's position. Those are those tangible things that make you different from everybody else. Maybe you are one of the first to have a particular technology in your market, right? I have technology I prefer, but we're brand agnostic today. So maybe you have certain technology in your practice, right? Maybe you are one of the first in your market to serve a certain market, like skin types 4 through, can we talk today? Skin types 4 through 6, right? Or maybe you serve a gender diverse population in a way that, your competitors don't, right? Your positioning, those are your tangible elements of difference. And then your personality, right? Maybe you are really fun and whimsical and kitschy. Awesome. Maybe you are really buttoned up and clinical. Great. Maybe you are really elevated, luxurious, and maybe a bit more of that aspirational brand. Wonderful. There is no right or wrong personality for a practice to have as long as it is authentic to who and you and your staff are. There is no right or wrong personality for your practice to have as a brand as long as it's authentic to who you and your staff are. So strategy is the bottom layer, right? Then we take that strategy and we put it into words. This is your messaging. This is your, tagline if you have one, your slogan, things your staff are saying to patients on the phone in the consult room. I like to call these like eyes light up moments, right? Like when you say them, all of a sudden you notice that whole patient's physiology change and you're like, oh, we've got them, right? Those are your messaging elements. Now, here's another thing. And going back to the competence famine, If you are using ChatGPT like everyone else, your messaging inevitably is going to suck. Why? Because ChatGPT does not know the nuances of your practice. It does not know the nuances of your brand. It does not know how to speak to the affluent. And it is giving you some generic robotic slop that sounds like everybody else. So messaging is really, really important. ChatGPT can help you brainstorm things, but I beg you, do not use it to develop your entire message. You will sound A, lousy, B, like 1,000 other med spas in our industry. So just be very careful with where you're using AI as it pertains to your messaging. And at the top of our pyramid, which is where most practices start erroneously, is your message, or pardon me, your visuals, right? That is your logo, the colors you use, what your website looks like, what your social media looks like, what the interior of your reception area looks like, right? That should be a visual reinforcement of your messaging, right? So everything builds on everything else, right? Visuals are really designed to reinforce strategy and messaging. Messaging is the way we interpret your strategy in words, and strategy is the foundation. I would love to know from all of you. Let me know in the comments, like, where are you the best right now? Where is your brand the strongest? And where are you the weakest, right? When we work with our private clients, like, we spend at least 30 days on strategy alone. We don't do a single visual thing until strategy and messaging are dialed in because they matter, right? And if you think of any brand you admire, they didn't just go hire someone off 99 Designs and say, make us a logo. Like, they truly, all these wonderful brands out there in the world of luxury and in the consumer facing world started with strategy, turn that into a message, and then really lean into your visual identity. So it's really important to keep all three of these layers in mind and really make sure that you're leveraging all three. And I see Naira is here, and Naira says visuals is her strongest. I love that. So brilliant. Let's keep moving right along. Three other things that really matter to your brand: consistency, clarity, and constancy. These are the three C's of a really strong brand. Let's talk about them real quick, right? The first is clarity. That means people know what you do, what makes you different. It is great to have a wide range of services in your practice. I'm not against that. But what I am against is marketing all of those equally, right? You all see this on social media every week. It's a practice that says, oh, we're great at, this laser. Oh, and we're great at weight loss. Oh, and we're really, really good at like this whole thing with our energy healer who comes in twice a month. Oh, and by the way, did you know we do lashes too? And you're like, what does this place do well, right? If you are marketing a million different things, you are giving yourself a clarity problem and creating a clarity problem in the minds of your prospective patients. So clarity is really, really important. The second is consistency, and we look at consistency two ways. The first is like visual consistency, which is like your website looks like your business cards, looks like your social media, looks like the inside of your practice. Like, that's visual consistency, and that is really, really important. Don't get me wrong. But the other kind of consistency, and the one where I see practices drop the ball, and frankly, the one when you're at the seven-figure mark that is the hardest to get right, is consistency of experience. The bigger you get, the harder this is. You need to make very well sure that whether someone comes in at 2 p.m. on a Friday or 11 a.m. on a Tuesday, right? Whether it is, with Nurse Johnny or Dr. Jenny, like, they have a consistent experience. If you look at a practice where their reviews are like all over the map, half of them are like, oh my gosh, I love this place. You got to come here. They're the best. And the other half are like, this place is the worst money I ever spent. Like, that to me is a practice that very clearly has a consistency of experience problem. So you really got to dial in that consistency. And then there's constancy, right? Remember how earlier I said the most dangerous number in marketing is one? Well, that's what constancy really speaks to. In the age of ingenuity and interaction, you really have to be the mayor of your market. You have to be everywhere. You can't just be hiding behind a smartphone. You can't just be doing word of mouth. You can't just be networking. You truly have to do it all, because online marketing productivity is no longer a viable advantage. It's an unwinnable game. So you need to be constantly everywhere and in more ways than you ever have been. I know that's not what you want to hear me say today, right? But you need to be doing more as far as mix of channels. Not everything in scattered and half measure, but making sure you're not too reliant on any one thing. We know it takes between 7 and 17 exposures for someone to even recognize and understand what your brand does. And if you're just relying on Instagram posts to get you to that level, you are going to be pushing a boulder up a hill. Oh my goodness. So clarity, consistency, and constancy, all very, very important. Now, how do you actually set your practice apart? Like, how do we actually differentiate your brand? There's three ways I want you to remember, and I really want you to think of what's going to make the most sense for you. One is going to be mechanism. How do you actually do what you do? Again, do you have category creator technology in your practice? Do you have best in class technology? That's part of your mechanism. Do you have a proprietary method? We're going to talk about that later today. That's part of your mechanism, right? How do you actually do what you do? That's one way to differentiate. Another way to really differentiate is authority. Maybe you've been featured in the media or in the press. Maybe you have credentials and training that your competition don't, right? Maybe you have won like a best of award. All of those are authority builders and you want to lean into them. So that's authority. Training you have, credentials you have, press and media you've received, awards you've won. That is where authority, maybe you're a trainer for a certain company. That is authority. And those can be things that differentiate your brand as well. And then again, last but not least is patients you serve, right? Do you serve an underserved population? Or maybe you are really, really good at acne scars better than anyone else in your market, right? And you want to lean into that. Who are the patients you serve, either based on their demographics or based on the condition they're coming to you with, right? You ideally want to target all three of these, but even doubling down on one can set your practice head and shoulders above the rest. So, authority, patients you serve, and mechanism. These are the three big ways you are going to set your aesthetic practice apart. Really lean into at least one, ideally all three to an extent. So this just explains a little bit like how you really want to go about developing a proprietary method, right? It's something that's going to set you head and shoulders apart from the competition. Here's how you go about it, right? So, like, how do you actually assess a patient's skin quality? How do you assess their needs? Do you use a skin scanning device? Do you have something like a beauty score method? Maybe you've got a really great AI tool that can do that for you, right? But your assessment is one place you can build a proprietary method. The other is like, where do you start with every patient? Like, someone comes into you, 50 years old, and never had an aesthetic treatment in their life. Where do we begin with them? Do we begin with their skin quality? Do we begin with, bone loss and density loss or sagging skin? I don't know. I'm no clinician. You tell me, right? But after we actually assess a patient, what is the foundational work we're going to do with them in their treatment plan? Begin to talk about that. Then where do we refine things, right? Are we using, dermal fillers to do that? Are we using esthetician services to do that, right? What does that look like, right? And what does it look like to be with your practice for the long haul? Have you actually mapped out what a 2 to 4 to 5 year journey with your practice looks like? If not, you should, because when you can market that to a patient, all of a sudden they're buying into certainty and they know that you have a journey for them to follow, right? So if you're thinking of where do I even begin developing a proprietary method, the great news is you're already doing this. You've just never put it into words, right? How do you assess a patient? How do you build their foundation? How do you refine the results you create from them in that foundation? And then what does the long-term journey with your practice look like? You need to map out all of this. And again, this is not something you need to do overnight. You crawl, you walk, and then you run. Like with our private clients, like we spend about 60 days really dialing this in before we ever start marketing it because we need to get into all the clinical nuances of everything they're doing with every different kind of patient. But when you get this, oh my goodness, it is a game changer. So really look at beginning to develop your proprietary method. You also need to get a lot better at telling stories. Like I said earlier, not just speaking to those five emotions, but not just, again, posting for the sake of posting or thinking, oh, lip fillers down this week. Let's post about that, right? Like you need to actually tell stories. And when I look at telling a story, there's really four kinds of stories you want to tell. One is going to be focused on issues or particular procedures, right? Maybe you're doing a campaign around acne scars. Maybe you're doing a campaign as we head into the spring months about getting your body summer ready, right? Maybe you are doing a campaign all about, mommies really feeling their most confident after the journey of childbirth, right? But procedure and issue focused stories are one kind of campaign you really want to lean into. Another is behind the scenes, right? Like I said earlier, that human touch, right? That really matters right now. Making sure people know who your providers are outside of the white coat. What are they doing in the community? What are they passionate about? How did you even get into medical aesthetics in the first place, right? That's a story worth telling. You want to make sure you do it. There will be other campaigns and other stories you tell that are more positioning focused. What makes your practice different, right? Maybe again, it's who you serve. Maybe it's those authority factors. Maybe it's your mechanism. Those kind of things play out really well in a positioning oriented campaign. And then last but not least, we're in a competence famine because too many of you are camera shy. Straight up, right? We need you to be out there educating, dispelling myths, talking about like why maybe you shouldn't take skincare advice from a 22-year-old with no credentials, right? Talking about why like, no, it's a really bad idea to try and do these things yourself, right? To save some money, you're going to end up in the ER. Like you need to educate people. There is so much bad information out there. You need to really overcome all of that by being out there as a voice for good, by being out there as an educator. It is super, super important. So these are the kinds of stories you need to be telling. Issue and procedure focused stories and campaigns, provider focused stories and campaigns, campaigns and stories that are really focused around educating and dispelling all the bad information out there. And then, of course, stories and campaigns that position you. These are the four you want to see in your content mix across everywhere: social media, email, website, all of it. And guess what? This is that stuff that AI slop can't convey very well, right? So that already helps you overcome all of that gunk that's out there on the websites and on social media and everywhere else right now. So let's talk about really quickly what the 5 types of patients you also want to start to market to. And this isn't about demographics, it's actually about psychographics, right? So let's look at like beauty seekers. When you think of the typical aesthetic patient, you might think of a beauty seeker. Like this is that person that, like wants to feel like they look flawless every day and like wants that like I woke up like this effect. That's a beauty seeker, right? Then we've got our change seekers, which by the way, change seekers are driving the growth of aesthetic medicine. They are people where something in their lives has changed. They're entering a new season of life. Maybe they just hit their 50s or 60s. Maybe they're newly single. Maybe, they're an empty nester for the first time and their kids are out of the house and they finally have the time and resources to do something for themselves. Maybe they're starting on a new career path, right? Whatever the case happens to be, they're coming to an aesthetic practice because something in their lives has changed and they want to really elevate their appearance as a catalyst to this new thing in their lives. So those are change seekers. We've got harmony seekers, my personal favorite, if I gotta be honest with you. These are people that are usually 40 and better. They don't wanna look any different. They kind of just wanna look like the best version of themselves, right? But harmony seekers. Then we've got prestige and detail seekers, and I put those in the same side on purpose because like they act very similarly, but their motivations are different, right? Prestige seekers, these are your CEOs. These are often many of your male patients, right? These are people that like they want the best of the best. They're happy to pay for it, but like they will never tell a living soul they've been to your practice, no, you cannot use it before and after, so we will not let you. Like they're very discreet. They pay money, good money, but they're very discreet, right? And then last but not least is our detail seekers. Think of these as like your ladies who lunch. They want the best of the best at any cost. And whereas a prestige seeker will never tell anyone they've been to you, a detail seeker, oh my gosh, they'll tell all their friends, right? They are social butterflies, right? So these are your 5 types of patients. I would encourage you to think about who you're marketing to and who you have in your patient base right now and who you kind of just want to see more of, right? And really lean into them. So this just gives you a bit more of an idea of what all 5 of these different patient types are looking for, right? Detail seekers want credentials. Prestige seekers, they want VIP access. They want exclusivity. They truly want the red carpet experience, right? As for your harmony seekers, like they want to know you are not going to change how they look. If you start talking about transformation to a harmony seeker, you are going to scare them right out of your chair, right? They want to know that things, it's that whole idea of like the undetectable injectable. That speaks perfectly to a harmony seeker. If you have energy devices like lasers in your practice, oh my gosh, that is right up the alley of a harmony seeker because that's going to change how they look. They're just going to look like the best version of themselves, right? Your change seekers, they need clear guidance and they need a little bit of empathy. They need a little bit of that hand holding, right? As for your beauty seekers, they want to see your before and afters. They want to know, what is going to be that result? How are they going to look better? That's what they're looking for. So just keep all these nuances in mind when you're speaking to these 5 types of patients and really make sure that you are speaking their language, right? If you're trying to market to harmony seekers, but you've got a wall full of before and after and not talking about the safety profile of your treatments, you've lost them, right? You need to speak your patient's language. These are the 5 different patient languages you want to try and speak to. So keep these in mind. Now, let's just talk about where you're leaking revenue a little bit, right? Retention. I tell our practices who are at 7 figures, I can get you to your next million without a single new patient if you let me, right? We need to do a lot more to get our existing patients to buy more and more often, right? Retention is one big possible place you're losing revenue right now as a 7-figure practice. Another is going to be your patient experience, right? Good is no longer good enough. You need to have an extraordinary patient experience, so extraordinary, such that people can't help but talk about you, right? Treatment planning. If someone comes into you for toxin and you're only talking about toxin, you are breaking my heart. If someone comes into you for, melasma and you are only talking about melasma, you're breaking my heart, okay? You need to properly treatment plan and educate a patient about everything you can do for them. The number one way you are going to lose a patient in 2026, it's by undereducating them, okay? They don't know that you did this, particular thing because you thought they didn't want to hear about it or that they couldn't afford it and you prejudged them. So off they go to another practice that does tell them they offer it. They do a full treatment plan and now they just haven't got them for the thing you didn't talk to them about. They've got them for the toxin and the facials and everything else, right? For all good things in this world, please stop undereducating. You need to treatment plan for every single patient. And then again, messaging, right? If you sound like everybody else, you are just going to find yourself lost in the sea of AI slop and obscurity. It's just the nature of the industry we're in right now. Messaging matters. It's always mattered. It has never mattered more than it does right now in the era of ingenuity and interaction. Super, super important. Now, like I said, retention really needs to be something you keep front and center. If you're a brand new practice with no patience, we need to get you there. But again, this is for 7-figure practices. Retention is your best weapon, right? Look at your patient's lifetime value. Do you even know that number or do you have no clue, right? You need to get to know that number and then look at how we can maximize it. right? So really start looking at some of these retention-oriented metrics for a change. We don't need 100 new patients a month. We need like 12 to 15 to 20 really good patients who are going to see you every 6 weeks, do all the things, and be worth so much more, right? You don't need more patients, you need better patients. And we need to get more from the patients you already have. That's one of the many reasons these 30 patients, 30 days ads irk me to no end, right? Now, again, good has probably gotten you to where you are. Good has gotten you to, again, like we talked about earlier, that ceiling of clinical excellence, right? What's going to get you to that next level is an extraordinary experience. How do we deliver that 5-star Ritz-Carlton level of service and anticipate a patient's needs before they even know they have them? That's what's going to get you to the next level, right? So really audit your patient experience and really look at we can get it to that next tier of really making patients feel like, wow, I've never had an experience like this, right? Wow, these people remembered me. Wow, this practice truly cares, right? It's going to make a world of difference. Now, again, going to that whole idea of treatment planning, I am a big fan of the good, better, best approach. You never give a patient one option and tell them take it or leave it. That is just a way to have business walk right out the door. We give patients options, right, based on how quickly they want to see results and what price point we're respecting that let them feel like they're in the driver's seat, but it's based on your suggestions. You are still in that position of credibility and confidence, right, and dictating the care, right? So we do that through really a good, better, best treatment plan. I always say give that patient 3 options and always start from the right and work backwards to the left, right? We start with the best option, the most comprehensive plan, so someone is fully educated. If they don't want to do all of that right away, great, and let them know we don't need to do all of that right away. Maybe you just want to start with a few modalities that are going to really be more of an enhanced result for you. Great, that's like the better option, right? And then if you've got a patient that wants to move more modestly, or maybe they're, more modest in terms of their investment they have to make in their beauty that week or that month, then we offer them the good plan. Get results, but just a bit more modestly and one modality at a time, right? This way, a patient feels empowered. They don't feel like they're being, pushed or hard sold into anything. They feel like they have options. A good option, a better option, and a best option, right? We always start at the right and then work our way towards the left. This alone will be a game changer for you. Um, Again, you've heard me say it before a million times if you know anything about me. Be mindful of the words you use. For all good things in this world, don't sound like the podiatrist's office or, the family care medicine office. Like, that is just not an elevated experience. You need to be very mindful of the words you use. Free and cheap and discount, all those words that you value your brand, I beg you, please delete those from your vocabulary. They're not doing you any favors, right? So be mindful of using luxury language. Super, super important. So where are our next high ticket patients, right? Again, many of them probably not on Instagram, right? They are living in the world around them. They are in what we call the experience economy, right? We need to tap into where we find them in this age of AI slop. And again, so much digital fatigue, right? So really start to look at what are we doing in the community? What are we doing offline before you even think of going and spending another dime on meta ads? You do not need to go buy more meta ads right now, okay? That's probably one of the last things you need to do. What you need to start doing is auditing the leaks in your existing patient experience and the leaks in where you are or are not retaining patients. Then we need to actually fix your foundation, making sure you have unique modalities, that you've got a seamless experience, that you are doing things the right way. It's going to actually make patients want to stay and feel like they're getting something from you they can't get anywhere else, right? From there, we elevate your messaging, right? Make you sound so much different and superior to everyone else in your market, right? Then we build a referral engine. That's a whole other webinar for another day, but we build a referral engine. And last but not least, then and only then, and again, using our private clients as an example, most of our private clients, we don't look at their paid advertising until usually it's closer to anywhere from 6 to 8 months until they've been working with us. Then and only then do we start looking at websites and paid ads and Google and all the things because there is so much groundwork that we have to do first. And don't let these lazy marketers, these 30 patient 30 days types, these people that only have ads to sell you and don't care about strategy, try and convince you otherwise. Don't go blow money on ads until you've got all these other foundational steps in place. My one exception is if you are a new practice, then yes, there will need to be ad spend. But even then, we need your brand dialed in first, right? So don't put the cart before the horse. Very, very important to understand. Really understand, again, relationships are the name of the game. The affluent do business based on relationship and referrals. You need to make sure that you are building that community network. And if you are a multi-provider practice, as many of you probably are, as you get into the 7 figures and multi-7 figures, you need to make sure people trust your other providers just as much as you do. You need to make sure people trust these centers of influence that you're referring business back and forth with just as much as you do, right? Who are good targets? I love people in the fitness industry. I love wedding planners. I love luxury real estate brokers. Anyone who has access to the patients you want but doesn't compete with you, guess what? That can be a great COI or center of influence. So many of you are like spending tens of thousands of dollars a month on Google ads and meta ads, but have never bothered walking 5 steps down the street to the Pilates studio to introduce yourselves. That blows my mind. What are you doing? Like, you need to start, actually, you need to start talking to people in the community, yes, but you need to stop stepping over dollars to get to dimes with these online ads that probably aren't even bringing you very good leads, anyways, for being completely honest, right? So keep that in mind. So, again, what is your greatest asset? It's your brand. It's your position. It is your clinical credibility. Lean into that. That's always been important. It is more important now than ever. My goodness, right? What is your proprietary method? How do we sell the outcome and the building of that result versus just selling the modalities that are going to get them there? There's a place for selling modalities, and it's really, really important, especially if you've got better technology than everybody else. But don't let that be the entirety of it. You do need to speak about what makes you unique as well, right? And again, you want to get your patients 80% sold. If your marketing is doing this job the right way, and it takes time to get here, but you can do it, right? That patient should be 80% of the way to deciding, you know what? Yeah, this is the practice for me. This is what I want. That way, by the time they come in for that consult, they're 80% of the way there. And all you're left to do is not sell and tell and convince, but really just answer some clarifying questions, right? That's where AI can be good. AI can help get a patient there if you use it the right way, but understand your marketing done correctly. By the time someone comes into that practice, they should be 80% of the way sold to deciding, you know what? Yes, this is the place for me. How are we going to do that? Is credentialing materials sent via email before they come in for the consultation. It's a video walkthrough of the practice. They get an automatic email before they come in, so they actually see what the space is like, how fabulous you and your staff all are, a storytelling video. Those are all 80% sold materials. We want to get that patient 80% sold by the time they come in, right? Very, very important. So how do you shatter the ceiling? If we just talked about a lot and like not a lot of time, 4 big steps you can distill it down into. Number 1, your branded positioning. That truly is the nucleus. Everything else is going to flourish from. If you don't have that right, you are pushing a boulder up a hill. You are building on quicksand. You need to get your branded positioning dialed in. That's, again, always mattered in the world of AI slop everywhere, where everyone can produce infinite amounts of content every month on social media and, online channels. It is more important than ever. Brand positioning is where you begin. From there, you need to deliver a good experience, right? There's no use in trying to get a patient if we don't have an experience that's going to get them to want to come back, right? You need to dial in your experience. Extremely important to do that, right? And then third, retention and loyalty. How are we actually going to maximize our lifetime patient value? How are we going to get the patients you already have to buy more and more often? That is incredibly important, right? And then last but not least, how do we actually build connections in the community and add these new marketing pieces to the puzzle that are going to get the right kind of affluent patients, not just get them online, there's a place for that, but more importantly, get them where they're frequently coming now from and where they're really moving as a demographic in the population. How are we going to get those offline connections? So we start with brand, we elevate the experience from there, then we move into retention, loyalty, and then we look to really build a marketing ecosystem that's going to attract the right kind of patients, those high ticket patients who gladly spend more. So at a glance, that is how we do it, right? That is how we really go ahead and build you to that next million. We shatter the ceiling. Good is good, but it can only get you so far. So I know that was a lot in 48 minutes. My gosh, we went lickety split. I hope you learned something. If you're like, you know what, this actually sounds really cool. Like, how do we actually do that? Adam, what are you all about? I would love to invite you to schedule a marketing insights meeting. You can do that at marketinginsightsmeeting.com. We'll tell you all about what we do around here, share some opportunities for your practice, see where we see those biggest growth really levers and what they're going to be for your practice, which are never the same. One size never fits all, but you can do all of that at marketinginsightsmeeting.com. So thank you for joining me today, you guys. Remember, build the brand, enter the experience, attract the right patients. Your next million is not only possible, it's actually a lot closer than you think, and it doesn't involve spending more money on ads. That's the great part. So thank you for joining me today. It's a Friday. Happy weekend, right? If you like this, stay tuned for more webinars coming soon. Thank you for taking some time with me today. I so appreciate you guys. Bye for now. I would love to hear what you thought of this video. What did you like? What else do you want to learn? Let me know in the comments below. We're always posting new content, so make sure you go ahead and like and subscribe to this channel as well. And of course, if you're looking to learn about how we can help you make your marketing that much more uncommon, that much more elevated, and you really want to understand what you can achieve for your practice, go to marketinginsightsmeeting.com. We would love to chat with you and learn all about your goals.